The question of why toxic or dysfunctional relationships happen and then why they often reoccur is a big question that we get often on retreat. There's so many people out there who are almost traumatized by the series of difficult relationships with conflict and challenges that they've had. And they're wondering how they keep happening. Even if you've only had one relationship that you may call toxic, you are often confused as to how it happened and why it escalated into that form of relationship. And in order to understand why a relationship can become toxic and how that happens recurrently, we kind of need to understand our motivation and understanding of what a relationship is and what it's going to bring to our lives. Many of us are out there hoping to find the perfect partner, hoping that that perfect partner will in some way change the way life feels for us. Maybe we feel incomplete on our own, maybe we're struggling with loneliness, maybe we've just come to the belief that being with somebody will be better than not being with somebody. And we form a decision that says, I'll be happier when I'm in a relationship. That decision can be very embedded and deep, or it can be shallow and on the surface. But either way, it says that we are going into the relationship to change the way we feel. Immediately you do that, there is a responsibility on the partner you choose in order to sustain the way you feel. It brings lots of expectations. There's a structure that will build over time that says what they can do and how they can offend you, how they can break the rules. And often, most of those rules are not even visible. So the structure of relationships can often be an externality that we're chasing in order to make us feel better. And once we get into the relationship, we are very likely to become dependent on it to keep our state of being okay, to feel okay and good. This dependency is very, very nerve-wracking. It makes life quite difficult because everything your partner says and does becomes something that can shake the foundations of your life, the way you feel about everything. And the interesting thing about these relationships that we're talking about is that often when we are in a place where our relationship with relationships says that we need one and that it will change the way we feel fundamentally, we often fall into a roller coaster ride of commonality with other people who are in the exact same situation. So codependency and dependency on each other with lots of expectations and rules is what occurs. Relationships that have structured expectations, lots of boundaries, lots of rules, and things that your partner can say and things your partner can't say that will affect your state of being are fraught with difficulty. As each person in the relationship is dependent on the presence of the other person and the behavior and the words of the other person, it becomes very challenging to navigate. Half of those expectations and rules are not known by your partner. And even if they are compressing and confining your partner into a set of behaviors, words, and freedoms that are limiting their existence. And it happens both ways in a relationship where both people are dependent on it for how they feel. So when you've got people who go into a relationship for the way the other person makes them feel, you have a melting pot of expectations that's only going to escalate. And as it escalates, and if the other person has a similar set of expectations that are also escalating, the difficulty and conflict will always build. Where is my partner? Who are they speaking to? What are they doing? Why are they doing that when they're not supposed to within my expectations? And how does this feel? And as we start to realize that our roller coaster of emotion is coming from everything our partner does, and we are attached to their presence, not presence, where they are, when they're doing things, and if they're with us or not, we realize that it is building our insecurity, because as soon as we are aware that how we feel is dependent on this person totally, then we are fragile and we are super worried about where they're going, what they're doing, who they're speaking to, and how it feels to be with them. That means that there's going to be arguments, conflict, and there's going to be difficulty. And interestingly, because we're so dependent on the relationship, even though both people feel the conflict and feel the difficulty, it's often true that both are scared and terrified of leaving the relationship, even though it isn't a pleasant place to be, because their state of being depends on it. It's a pattern that will repeat itself until we realize our independence, because while we're dependent on being with somebody for how we feel, we are going to be in a difficult position because we give responsibility to our partner or the person we're with for that exact thing, how we feel. And if they don't comply with the rule sets, then how we feel is going to be up and down and change, and we are still terrified of not having them present if they were to leave or if the relationship were to end. So this is how we end up staying with people, and it's not one person or the other that is causing the issue, it is the codependency, both people being totally dependent on the other for how they feel. You can see these patterns really easily in lots of people, where a person is unable to be on their own. They are scared of being alone, and in many people you'll see a pattern that's a little bit like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. They will stay in a relationship even though it doesn't suit them until they can find the next person. And that's because they are dependent on what the relationship brings for how they feel, but have decided that they need a different branch next to swing on. So what they do is they find the next person who's going to meet all their needs, and then they let go of the last, meaning there's no gaps. It is just one relationship to another. And there might be a little gap between relationships, but you'll often see that people who are dependent on the idea of a relationship will have very short periods between relationships. And that's because they're terrified of being alone. Obviously, that's the same reason they stay in a relationship that doesn't work too. So, interestingly as well, as we find ourselves and we find our partners, what actually happens is many of our ideas match in terms of if I'm dependent and you're dependent and we meet, or we go on a dating site and find commonalities in our ideas, then we have this intense and obvious alignment in our feelings about our last relationship and our feelings about what we want in the next. And this distorts the feeling of matching. So two people have stories that are similar to tell of their last relationships and the people they were with. They share them and they think they've got lots in common. And they have this intense roller coaster of emotion and depth of connection. And then it turns to dependency as the rule sets build and the dependency and insecurity builds. And then a relationship that seemed like it was perfect, star-crossed lover syndrome, turns into toxicity all over again. And the next time, and the next time. The reason you are having toxic relationships or dysfunctional relationships and then having another one is simply because you are not independent.